Okay, so today's going to be a little bit quicker. I had some ideas for a topic, but I just haven't had enough time to dig into them. So hopefully next week we'll be doing something that I want to call Unsung Villains. There are a lot of people who tend to slip by the news in this administration who are doing bad things, and it is important that they get the light of scrutiny from the public. But because they slip through, it is harder to find things on them. So it's a thing I will work on, and it may take me some time to get that up and running. So what I want to talk about today is going to be, like I said, a little bit more brief, but I specifically want to talk about our new Secretary of the HHS, not terribly in depth, because I think it's more important to focus on the people immediately around him, especially when you consider that there's a lot of reporting on RFK. I'll link some of it in the description of the video that you can go look at, and I'll use some of that as we move forward, not particularly in this video. But it's important to also understand the people around him. So I know a lot of people have split opinions because the man does, in fact, say some things that make sense, but the way he got there is through insanity and being incorrect. Because of this, he says things that on their face sound reasonable. And so it's important to ask ourselves, who are the people around him? Now, right now, not the entire top of the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, has been confirmed or set in place, but we do know a few people. Let's start with Stephanie Spear. So she is currently the Principal Deputy Chief of Staff and Senior Counselor to the Secretary of HHS, so to RFK. Stephanie was actually the media director for his presidential campaign. Prior to that, Stephanie was, for some 2 decades, a PR person. That's what she did. She was a consultant and a PR person. She had a lot of sort of credentials and clout in the environmental space, so in the same space that RFK initially did, in sort of environmental law and environmental justice. Back in 2020, she joined Children's Health Defense with RFK and helped co-found The Defender, which is his website/newsletter around that. So she had her bona fides and credentials in sort of environmental stuff around PR and consulting, and took that same turn with him into the anti-vax and healthcare conspiracy realm. That is his person in HHS. She came from his campaign. She was clearly his choice to do that. Now, there are 2 people who are Trump loyalists who also have spots in HHS under RFK. The first is Heather Flick Melanson. So she is the Chief of Staff. She has a large amount of influence over HHS and RFK's decisions, and will likely act as the eyes and ears of Trump. She's a longtime Republican politico. She was acting general counsel for HHS during Trump term 1. And she's had a few different roles in that administration. Her loyalties are to Trump. That should be clear. They're not to RFK. You also have one Hannah Anderson. Now, Hannah is younger. Her most recent role was actually as the policy head for the America First Policy Institute, I believe that is, which was Trump's sort of pre-election, like, here are all the things I intend to do. She was the health person in charge of that. She is now the Deputy Chief of Staff for the Secretary of HHS. What you should know about her is that she actually graduated in 2014 from Taylor University. Her degree, a bachelor in history and psychology. She did some teaching in the poli-sci department there, some sort of TAing in the poli-sci department. She worked for a while for a Boston consulting group, and then she also worked in Senate and congressional campaigns as staffers for Bobby Jindal in the Senate, I believe. She was his chief health policy advisor. And then you have one Scott Rowell. Very hard to find anything on him. I believe he is a former colonel and is the deputy chief of staff for operations. So he's the personnel person. What you should know about all of these people is that not a person has any legitimate experience in science or in medicine. To be clear, these people who are the top echelons of the Department of Health and Human Services have no relevant experience in anything related to that, except for conspiracy, right-wing bullshit. You could argue that chief of staff would be better served as legal counsel for HHS since she is a lawyer, but that's not her role. So a lot of people, when they voted because RFK would make America healthy again, the thing that they thought was that clearly he would have some power to do something. That is increasingly unlikely. His main sort of support staff around him, 3/4 are Trump people, not RFK people. Only one of them is an RFK person, which means he'll be leashed, which, you wouldn't like if you voted for him for that, but I happen to think is at least somewhat good, but only in that it just means there's some level of constraint. We just don't know what that looks like. Probably more of a pro-business restraint than anything else, but who could say? Now, I struggle with sort of the idea of how to discuss this. We've seen increasing layoffs at HHS, probationary employees. So probationary employee status actually varies by agency. Some have 1 year, some have 3 year. There's a bit of a difference in the amount of time you have to work before you're no longer probationary. In parts of HHS, that's 3 years. Now, something important to note is that moving from one department to another, or from some roles to other roles, can change you back to being probationary. So just because you are probationary right now does not mean that you don't have 10 or 15 years of experience in the government work, which is important. We're going to have lost, just from these probationary purges, we're going to have lost tens to hundreds of thousands of years of experience in HHS. It's a staggering amount. It's a we don't come back from this easily amount. And there is little that can be done at this moment. So how do you talk about that? Because it's not just that we as a government and as a country lose that experience from agencies where it is necessary, but it is that this is thousands of people losing their livelihoods like that. And the problem is they're all in sort of the same industry, which means that entire industry is going to see its sort of job openings dwindle, competition will go up, pay will go down. It is going to be a bloodbath if it's not already one, and it sort of is. So it's difficult to talk about this and feel anything other than just rage. What's being done to people is fundamentally wrong on just the personal level. This isn't even just wrong on policy or on science, but wrong on a personal level. To inflict damage on people. And not just to do that, but to do it fucking gleefully. To celebrate hurting people like this. To celebrate it. To make memes out of it. It strains decency and it's fucked up. And that's why I want to, as I move forward, focus on those unsung villains. Because what they want is for the people they disagree with to not be comfortable, not just in public, but in private. They want you to hurt because you don't agree with them. They don't want you to know peace in your life. And so they should not know peace when they are in public. They should not get to fly under the radar. Their actions have consequences to others, and they should have some consequence to themselves. And a lot of the bigger targets are juicy and it's easy to find things on. But to be clear, after his tenure at HHS, RFK will be a non-viable public entity. It's not him you have to tear down. It is not him who you pressure. And it is not him who you can shame into being better. But the people around him, you can at least make sure that anonymity does not let them live a comfortable life. And so that is what I would like to focus on. But as I said, that is difficult to find. So I will continue to work on that. It may not be next week. It may be the week after that. But one thing that I think will also be coming up soon is talking about the capitulation we're seeing and why that feels so rough. Because it's a thing that I've been mulling over that is difficult to sort of encapsulate, but is important to note and to understand how that's affecting feelings around this time. So, like I said, much shorter. I did just want to point out that a lot of the top brass at HHS is filled with people who have no business being there. And I feel like that's something that is sort of endemic for this administration or for this regime, whichever word you choose to use, because neither would be wrong. So, dark days may be ahead, but I do not intend to be quiet. I do not intend to stop. This is important. Even if 2 people see this, that is 2 more people than I would have told otherwise. And it's important now that we build community and we find a network of people who we can agree with about what it fundamentally means to be an American and what it fundamentally means to be a human with some sort of decency and goodness. So, take care, and I'll see you next week.